Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, it is I, Taylor Field, here for the Bad Batch episode 2 review. Spoilers, of course. As you may notice, oh god, it's late. My mind is all riled here. But yes, it is just me. Travis Snell has opted out. As you could tell from our first episode 1 spoilers review, this just was not his cup of tea, so he is taking a back seat so he can do a whole binge at the end of the series when it releases the final episode. So until then, I'm going to be bringing you can see the reflection of my glasses. I'm going to take those off so you can't see my screen. But yeah, it'll be me carrying you guys along through to the end of the Bad Batch series. So yeah, some plugs to kick us off. With your internet connection, check us out on our home base, GeekVerse.ca. Check us out on our Twitter, GeekVerseCast, and check us out on our Facebook, GeekVerse. Be sure to check us out also on our Patreon, because we have a lot of exclusive content available there, including we are dropping our Harry Potter retrospective episodes on there. I believe we have done from Philosopher's Stone all the way up to Goblet of Fire, and those are being released weekly. I believe Goblet of Fire will release this weekend. Yeah, other than that, there's exclusive content and lots of other fun stuff that's in the works for you guys. So never a dull moment. We did just do a newscast earlier today, and that is available on our feeds as well. We talk a little bit about some DC stuff, Warner Brothers, and yeah. With that being said, non-spoilers, Bad Batch episode 2, cut and run. Now, I know that the first episode, obviously, it sold me on this show. It had me super excited, and I really wasn't sure where they were gonna go direction-wise with this episode. I was really curious because, I mean, obviously, the only cliffhanger we had was that he knew somebody, Hunter, knew somebody that would help them in their situation after the events of the first episode. And again, in Star Wars, that could be anybody. It could be a brand new character made up. In the back burner, I'm just waiting for Hondo to pop up in in this series. Not saying that was Hondo or wasn't Hondo, but yeah. So it was interesting in this episode to see what event unfolds, like who their contacts are as clones, or like not alternate clones, what do they call them? I'm drawing a blank. Different clones. And it's just interesting to see, as I said, their connections. Who were they tied with, and what was it like awaiting them out here in this massive universe. So as their adventure kind of progresses with Omega in this episode, I think you get a lot more character development that is definitely warranted. I found that I was falling so much more in love with these characters. I think that they all bring a unique personality to the table. And again, it's such a great way to carry on the Clone Wars in that sense, where the clones have all obviously been Order 66 and they've lost a lot of their unique personality and their compassion. But that embodiment of what they were is lived and carried on in the Bad Batch in so many ways. And I love that, how it's, again, emphasized in this episode. And this episode has a lot of heartfelt moments that I'm not going to say like made me cry. It definitely make me cry, but again, it is late, so I am exhausted. So I was definitely like, maybe like not a tear, but like a little drizzle in the corner of my eye. Like, oh my god, that was some touching stuff. So, but yeah, it was just great. And again, they just mixed in some great action. The animation is fantastic. I love the score. It's just, with Travis not here, all you're gonna get is just Taylor fanboying out the wazoo for this series. So I hope you're okay with that. Yeah, other than that, I can't think of anything else non-spoiler related. So I'm just gonna 3, 2, 1. We're in spoiler territory now, ladies and gentlemen. So right off the hop, I'm just gonna say it. Going back to Saleucami, getting the Nexu in there. Oh, that was great. Hearing those classic Nexu sounds from Attack of the Clones popping off, that was so awesome. Now, I wasn't expecting to actually get a little battle sequence with the Nexu. I think that was freaking awesome, and I was just fanboying all over that stuff. That whole connection and the contact being cut, the clone trooper that we met in one of the earlier episodes of the Clone Wars, I can't remember which one, but it was when Rex was, I believe, injured, and he was rescued by the clone Cut, who basically deserted the Grand Army of the Republic, had a family with a Twilight wife, 2 kids, everything on this farm. Awesome story. Really, really awesome. And to have it follow up with him, I was not expecting that. I was blown away, but I love that they did that. I thought it was a great touch. And it fits in with the story so well. I love that they came here, and I feel like it was a pre-existing idea that Hunter had to leave the child Omega with them. It was great. And God, these clones, goodness gracious, these clones, they just have the ones that have an Order 66. They have these unique personalities, and Cut's just the way he handles everything when it comes to Omega almost being killed by the Nexu, and then him panicking in line all of a sudden. Like, they just have their strong suits and then their faults, and it's just so crazy awesome. But I it was probably one of my most favorite things in this episode. I feel like the dynamic between Hunter and Omega really got flushed out in this, so you could see their relationship progressing and how he knows he's not a father, and he realizes that no, she's not a soldier, and she goes through these realizations as well. And you just kind of go through these appreciations with Omega. She spent her whole life on Camino, and she finally gets to touch dirt for the first time, and it's just how powerful that is for her. So I love that we got to spend a few moments just taking in that moment with her. I think it was just so awesome. The rest of the crew, though, I think when Travis gets around to watching this episode, I think he'll come around to Wrecker. I believe in this episode, for me at least, Wrecker was much more toned down the jokes, and he was just really bringing it. He was much more compassionate and serious. Really, really liked his character. And Tech is easily becoming my favorite character of the Bad Batch so far. Next to Wolf. Hunter. Hunter is really, really awesome, but Tech is definitely up there for me. I love how he's curious, and I love his facial reactions. He's a lot of it's like just with his eyes, but I love seeing him with his helmet off because he's always just intrigued and everything. And we get to talk a little bit more about the inhibitor chips as well. Following up from the last episode where Tech was talking about how the regs were programmed and everything. So it's cool that they emphasize, okay, the Bad Batch didn't know about these inhibitor chips necessarily. And it totally slipped my mind because in the first episode, they talked about the inhibitor chips. And in retrospect now, I realized that it was never really talked to the Bad Batch in regards to. So it was mostly just Tarkin and the Kaminoans discussing it. So it was very cool to finally have the Bad Batch be aware of that. Now, that being said, when the Bad Batch shows up to see Cut, and Cut's like, oh yeah, Rex was in here the other day. It's like, oh my God, all these clones that just desert, they just know each other. And obviously Cut has his inhibitor chip, but I mean, he wasn't near a hologram or any sort of programming saying XQ or 66 or whatnot. So there's nothing that could really, I mean, you have to tell him the order. It has to be a prime directive. I'm assuming, obviously, only from Chancellor Palpatine, Emperor Palpatine at this time. So he would be devoid. So I guess that's a surefire way to kind of keep everyone safe. If you keep all the clones away from this galactic scale order, I imagine that they wouldn't execute it, which is an interesting counter. Because, I mean, if the internet's down on like a Venator class Star Cruiser, hypothetically, and the message doesn't go through, then, I mean, you're Gucci with as a Jedi and with all your battalion of clones. But yeah, anyways, the fact that Rex swung through there was just, I love that mention. It kind of just pinpoints where he is in this timeline. I know a lot of people are not expecting, but anticipating to see Commander Rex in the Bad Batch show. and it would fit, but I feel like it would be kind of a takeaway. And I know they have to pick and choose with their characters because I always feel like the Force Awakens kind of ideology applies to so many other things, where when you have this series and you're trying to establish these newer characters and you bring someone in from old canon, or not old canon, but just previous franchise content, it can damage it. And I know that Force Awakens, they did that with Luke. So I thought if we bring Luke in too early on, it's just going to damage it and won't let you connect with these characters, these new people we're trying to build a story off of. So for them to bring Rex in, I do feel like it would just be a mistake at this point. I 100% think, okay, end credit scene for season 2 setup or something like that. Definitely, throw Rex in there on just the final episode, have him help him out. But uh yeah, I think that would be the way to go, but I don't see him coming anytime soon because we're still trying to learn about these characters. And oh, what's his name? Oh, goodness gracious, why can I not remember his name? Quickscope, Deathstroke, Deadshot. Not the DC versions. Oh, gosh, I can't remember his name. The one who turned bad. I'm well, I'm not surprised that he didn't come back in this episode, but I'd be surprised if he didn't come back in the third episode. I feel like they're going to be having clones following them hot in their tail now because they were just on Seleucamai. And they were, oh my goodness, I'm yawning. Pardon me. Oh, it's so late. I do feel like now that they've caused such a ruckus on Seleucamai, and that was pretty significant too, because everything they were dealing with, from shooting and killing, I guess they don't call them their own brothers, they're just called them regs. So there's that dynamic, which is, so I thought was really interesting. And they were killing a lot of them, so they were just kind of just breezing over their heads, I guess, like, oh, these guys are programmed and they're just dunskies. But another thing I want to mention too is there's this episode and the last one, and it's so weird because I feel like it's in other forms of media as well, where and maybe I'm reading too far into it, but they drop these subtle, not Easter eggs, but these subtle little pieces of message in these shows and these films, where it just makes you think outside the box and question certain things. And I feel like it's very self-reflective of society, where there's certain things that society imposes or tries to do, but then these shows and the companies that put these shows and this content out, it's almost like they want you to oppose certain things in society in very good ways, but it's frowned upon if you were to talk or think like that. I just find it interesting is all. I'm not saying like, oh, go be a rebel or something or anything like that. I just find it interesting how there's certain little things, how they talk about Tech and Echo, discussing the fact that chain codes are a new thing with the Empire, and it's not just about registrations for ships, it's about registrations for every individual in the galaxy, stuff like that. I just find it very interesting stuff. Strauss would say I'm a conspiracy theorist of sorts and everything like that, but I more or less am curious, and I like to ask the questions because you gotta ask questions. And that's exactly what the Bad Batch has been doing in this so far in episodes 1 and 2, is they're asking the questions, and they're just met with this resistance and this opposition, and it's fueled where they are now. And I am really wondering where they're going to go after losing their contact. Well, not losing their contact with Cut, but having to send them off on their merry way, which again, for the story's sake, I love that they crossed their paths together, and it was just became this adventure of getting the chain codes for Cut and his family. I love that so much. I love how Tech had the plan of getting their ship transported into the lockdown area, and we got the boot clamp, which again, I'm trying to remember, the boots those aren't something, at least off the top of my mind right now, I remember being like frequent in a lot of Star Wars mediums, maybe in Clone Wars. And if you know, I mean, send this message to Geekverse on Facebook or on Twitter. Let me know, because I'm curious if the boot is in anything else other than Solo, a Star Wars story. because I remember obviously that Falcon had a boot on it when Lando was trying to fly the gang out of there, but I don't remember there being boots on any other ships and any other mediums. But it would have totally changed the plot of the entire original trilogy if they were just booting ships. Han Solo never would have got a Tatooine if Jabba the Hutt just booted the Millennium Falcon in the Tatooine hangar. So yeah, that I'm curious about. What else is there to talk about in this episode? Yeah, it was a quick 30 minutes down from the decent 70-minute sized first episode that we had, but yeah, score was great. The character development was awesome. The animation is just so bloody good. I love it. And again, the clone troopers, just how they've changed their dynamic and who they've become now is just crazy. How they've turned into it's just a force of evil, you could say. Now they don't feel like stormtroopers, and I don't know how Dave Filoni and the crew over there do this, but they're all wearing their just shiny white armor. They're not really differentiated by their markings anymore, and I just am flabbergasted. And I'm hoping it's not just me. But if you were to watch this show and Rebels, obviously the time period would really hit you hard and would space out the difference in the aesthetic and the feeling of dealing with the troopers. But it's both the Empire we're dealing with and the clone troopers in this just still feel so different from the stormtroopers. The stormtroopers just feel like the goons, but each clone trooper we still deal with, I feel like there's a sense of personality labeled with them, but they still feel evil, programmed, and different from stormtroopers. And I don't know how they do that, but I love that they've managed to somehow deliver that in this show. Again, Cut being almost caught. I love when the clone trooper was like, "You look like," like, I mean, it's like the Mandalorian when Boba Fett's like, someone might recognize my face or something like that. It's just, I love that kind of stuff. Obviously, the clone, in his defense, was very delayed in realizing that Cut was a deserter clone trooper. And I say this in support of the clone who was slow to come up to this assumption, because the last thing you expect is a clone to desert and be here with a family and 2 kids. I don't think any of these clones probably knew about that. I mean, probably most clones didn't. These clones didn't even seem to know about the Bad Batch, to be honest. They thought it was just locals, as they said, just with a gun stirring the pot. So, and again, when they captured the ship, the one clone didn't know what kind of ship it was. The other one knew, but didn't know it was labeled as the Bad Batch, which is funny because you think it would have had some iconic markings or anything like that to label it as like a high class priority Clone Wars vessel. Yeah, who knows? What else? We talked about the Nexu. There is one thing that I wanted to mention that I didn't mention on episode 1's review. When the Bad Batch arrived at Kamino and we see the clones carrying that, I guess it would be like a stretcher, and it had the dead Jedi body on it and the lightsaber fell out. I am really wondering if that's Shakti, because Shakti has died so many times now. We have her dying in the deleted scene from Revenge of the Sith. We have her dying in The Force Unleashed, and then we have her, I believe she didn't die in the Clone Wars Volume 2, because I think it was Volume 2 or the end of Volume 1, but that's because they kept her and killed her off in the deleted scene of Revenge of the Sith. But yeah, this must be the 3rd time that she's died in Star Wars media. But again, they haven't confirmed that was her, so who knows? But I'm willing to put my money on it that it was. But just very dark scene, very, very dark scene. Goodness gracious. It's just crazy that we're not getting any more Jedi in this series, but it's such a great success for the Clone Wars. And the intro too, I love that it just cut right to it. Again, I'm gonna miss the Clone Wars, like battle on Christophsis, like the whole intro narration stuff. I'm gonna miss that so hard because that's just so iconic. But I love how that first episode started with that, and then it segued into where we are now. before we get these intros to the episodes, we get the classic Disney Plus Star Wars, all the different faces of the characters kind of zooming by, and they changed it from the Mandalorian. This one is all based on the animated characters and stuff, which is just super, super exciting. Yeah. I think I've covered pretty much everything that I can at least remember. The show is just, it's proven to be great, and like I said earlier, I'm going to be fanboying over this series really, really hard. So oh, I think I mentioned this in our episode 1 spoilers review, but I'm going to say it again just to hammer in the prediction. I really do believe that Omega is a Force user. They hinted at it again, where what is her ability? The Kaminoans, they make every clone to have a purpose. And even her amulet, where it's on her forehead, using the mind for the Force and everything along those lines, I really heavily feel like there's something there. I feel like she's a clone that can use the Force. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But I'm calling it. That's my prediction. My Taylor, hashtag Taylor told you so moment. But yeah, gosh, all right, geeks. I think that's everything that I got. Make sure you tune in to whatever we got coming your way this week. It should be a good week of content. I know we're gonna try and see if we can dive into the Saw book from the book Spiral, the Book of Saw, and we're gonna see if there's an available showing in Canada around our area here. But other than that, then again, we'll follow up with hopefully A Quiet Place Part 2 near the end of the month for a review for that. But it all depends on how the release works in Canada for us. So, yeah. Until next time, I'll see you in the search bar late at night for episode 3, spoilers review of The Bad Batch, next Thursday night. So, until next time, have a good one.